In a spiritual awakening, typically what you're going to go through is a period of deconstruction, a period of reconstruction, and a period of construction. Now, today's post is all about relationships. How do our relationships get deconstructed, reconstructed, and constructed following a full integration of your spiritual awakening? Now, if you're going through a spiritual awakening, or you were born fully awake but didn't fit in, at some point or the other, this spiritual awakening will get into fifth gear, and relationships that are already existing will be rattled, as long as these relationships have some connection to being a hindrance. Remember, it doesn't even have to be a direct hindrance that comes from the relationship. It could be indirect, but that the presence of this relationship is creating an imbalance inside of you. Now, that imbalance that it is creating is in fact an imbalance that is already present inside of us. Now, without going into all of the dynamics about how we get impregnated almost with these kind of things, because it starts off with all of the experiences that we've gained over the course of existence. So not even time, but over the course of existence. And you can say time as far as you gathering that experience, you then getting it into your consciousness, you then going further and further away from pure consciousness into a consciousness that is now tailored in accordance with every manifest or a manifestation that comes as a result of an existence that you fetch into, depending on what you want to experience or what you have experienced. Most of us, during a spiritual awakening or right at the beginning or just before a spiritual awakening, will go through a period of feeling like something is about to happen. Some of you will be having breakdowns at this stage, and some of you who have been on a spiritual path, or you're on a path where you may have a belief system, for example, it may be religion, it may be a community, it may be a guru or a spiritual teacher, but you want to know more. So you're on a path. Now, a path, as we know, is not the same as a spiritual awakening and is no guarantee that, in fact, you're going to fully awaken, though you are already on a spiritual path. So a spiritual awakening, folks, as we know, is a paradigm shift of consciousness that takes you closer to pure consciousness, and during the course of which you go through these three stages of deconstruction, reconstruction, and construction. Now, in terms of a relationship, your very first relationship is with all that is. For some of you, you can call it God, Source. That's our primary relationship. The subset of that would be the primary relationship that we have with ourselves as the pure emanation of all that is. The second subset of the primary relationship would be our relationship with our projected self that is having the experience. Now, folks, wherever we are, we then have secondary relationships, and these secondary relationships are with other parts of existence, with other humans or beings that are also embodied. They can start off as not being embodied, but for the purposes of this post, we're going to focus on very practical aspects, relationships, embodied relationships. Now, the more you go into secondary relationships, which is relationships with the other, so relationship with another, then the primary relationships almost get forgotten about. So as you're going through experiencing yourself as the other, yourself and the other, experiencing yourself becomes quite difficult. So there is then a wound of separation, or what appears as a separation, although that separation is illusory. It is not real, because one can never really be separated from oneself, but one can forget that one is always connected. Now, when you then are in secondary relationships, your very first relationship that you'll experience will be with that of the caregiver. And after that is all the other relationships across linear time. The main relationships, folks, that have an impact on how you experience your life will be those relationships that have an impact on how all of your main energy centers work. Remember, the more we divorce ourselves from the primary relationship, which is almost inevitable because a sort of amnesia is almost a necessary part of us engaging in these relationships, so that we forget, but purposely so, only to then remember during the course of a spiritual awakening. Now remember, because a spiritual awakening is going towards pure consciousness, any relationship that stands in the way will be deconstructed or reconstructed, or indeed a new relationship will be constructed as you yourself go through these three stages. If you are involved, say for example, with a man or a woman that you've been with, over a course of many years, or for some of you, you might find that you're in one relationship, then another, and it's always as if you're on repeat because you seem to be attracting more or less the same energy in a partner. Then there'll be those of you who will have had this one person in your life. Again, maybe romantic, maybe not, maybe toxic, maybe somebody that you suffered abuse from, but you didn't realize it was abuse until you go through your awakening. Then you can really see through the fabric of that relationship. And it'll probably be the very one relationship that takes you so long to get rid of. Or to simply walk away from that as you walk into your truth, your authenticity. The closer you get to your truth, the closer you get to who you are and how you'd like to be projecting and perceived and perceiving life, all of these things will keep changing. Your primary caregivers will set your chakras moving in different directions. So if your primary caregiving was lacking in any way, then the kind of relationships that you seek out after that will also be lacking, because they will have been used to fill these gaps. There will be relationships such as, so we're going to do an example, that you have been in a very long relationship that has been with you since you have known a relationship. But this relationship may have been not in the norm. So some of you may have been involved in relationships that are outside of convention. Maybe you're not married to them, maybe it is an affair outside of marriage, maybe it is a relationship that is conventional, maybe you have been childhood lovers, you have been together since you've had a childhood together, and so you've been together for such a long time. Now one of you goes through a spiritual awakening, and if the other hasn't gone through one, they could potentially become a hindrance to you. And you'll find that the stages that you go through deconstructing these relationships will either mean that the changes you go through will then help both of you to get through, and you'll be moving towards a different trinity, if you like. You'll be moving towards a different kind of relationship, or you will either switch off from them so that suddenly you have an indifference that is neutral, so you neither love them or feel otherwise, or you will feel very, very angry. You will feel all of these emotions coming up inside of you, and you'll suddenly feel betrayed and cheated out of the experience that you should have had compared to the experience that you actually had. So the truth of these relationships suddenly comes. It's clear, it's crystal clear. But folks, to get that clarity to see a relationship just as it is, for what it is, will take a lot of grit on your part to get rid of expectations, to get rid of attachment, to get rid of even a disillusionment. You almost don't want to be disillusioned. You almost want to live in that illusion, because it's too unbearable to think that someone you may have invested your resources, your spirit, and fully trusted as that being an unconditional love, an unwavering love, that might have been your pillar of strength, only to you then unravel, unpack it all, and you realize that that relationship was the way it was because there were so many skeletons in the cupboard, because you fell in love with an idea and you ignored all the flags that were there. You always had an excuse or a reason why these people should still remain on the pedestal. Now, even after a spiritual awakening, our mind can play all sorts of games saying, well, no, but this is pure love, and therefore there's nothing wrong with it. No, this person really did love me, or they do love me. And your entire definition of love will change. Your entire process will change. Now, as you come into your own, during your spiritual awakening, the more advanced that you get, you'll find that you are now honing into your spiritual protection. Because it is in the interest of raising consciousness around existence that you will have, we will have other energies around us, that when we cannot let go of toxic relationships, we cannot let go of that which is a hindrance, which is a blockage, And your kundalini will be stuck at a certain place. You won't be able to get past a certain place. You'll keep finding that you're on a repeat, or that you want to go somewhere, but you're being stopped just because of this, because you're still harboring this veil of illusion, right? And that's when there will be an intervention. So if you yourself are not going to say shape up or ship out, and most likely ship out during your spiritual awakening, then there will be an event that will lead to this. For some of you who felt that they have sacrificed, now this is where a lot of you come in who have been people pleasing and who have never really known what your own boundaries are, right? Because these are the people who had overcritical parents, or you felt as a child that you always had to do better than, because better than was expected of you. You were never just accepted, right, at face value. You always had to prove yourself continuously. Now, for those of you who are like this, to sacrifice your very sense of self will almost be second nature to you. Not even second, it'll be so natural to you that you won't even know that, I've just sacrificed myself. That's where my line is. That's where my boundary is. You will never have known. You will never have known when your sense of self starts to get usurped in these relationships. Now, because of that, for those of you who would have been in these really long relationships, or not even long, but these relationships where you've really vested your sense of self, guys. Yeah, really important. This is where you have put the interests of other people before your own. Knowing that relationship may not even be in your best interest, but to you, to win their love meant that you've got to give up your sense of self, and you kept doing it. And then at the end, when there's an intervention and you haven't let go, you may find that they let go. Maybe for somebody else or for something else, and suddenly they find fault in you, right? And this is where, folks, you will feel so incredibly let down. You will feel a sense of absolute loss, because you've obviously done what you were trained to do, is to sell off your sense of self. For what? And your spiritual awakening rehashes exactly this. The pain comes when we're either clinging on to this, we don't want to move on, or the pain that we experienced that, knowing now that how could we experience something like that when this relationship simply comes to light. And it is the same, folks, for those of you who have gone through very complex childhoods, where you have gone through period of mourning and a grieving of a childhood that has been lost, never to be found again. Except what your spiritual awakening does as you go through deconstruction on the other side is there will be a reconstruction of these memories or these relationships. But at the same time, you will be going through a construction based on pure consciousness, your pure self, as you're getting closer and closer to the very essence of you, that is love. Stay tuned for the second part, folks. Sending you lots of love, and don't forget to share your love stories.